just heard my voice. I think somebody was changed. Good man. Uh, these are the service models: software, and so you'd have heard software as a service, or platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service. And so with these, first I want to talk about is infrastructure as a service. In terms of this service model, you typically would get from a service provider automated access to network, storage, and resources, and compute resources. What you're getting is raw access to whatever of those resources you want to build your solutions. It might be virtual machines, it might be storage to run a database on top of, or run a big data rig, or run a big data installation such as Hadoop on, or it may be a set of virtual networks that you use to manage boundaries for security and other reasons. Essentially, you have greater control. But of course, as Uncle Ben said, with great power comes greater responsibility. So you have to then be responsible for the uptime of the resources you're using, particularly around virtual machines and containers, or however you orchestrate the solution at an IaaS level. It really means then there's a set of expertise that your team needs to have to deliver this solution. And remember, if you're talking about cloud services and you're delivering a cloud service, it means your clients need to be able to easily request of you the ability to have more resources provisioned or not. I've seen, and this is a concern I have probably around the regions that exists, because I've heard it in Trinidad in particular. Someone may be offering a data center service, and I guess just to line up with the branding of cloud, they would then simply call their data center service a cloud, even though you still have to call manually and talk to someone on the phone to provision further resources, be it VM or storage or other kinds of resources needed for a solution. Or you may have to email a request and someone has to reply to provision it and take you through a manual step-by-step process to get your solution deployed. If that's the case, then I submit to you, that's not a cloud provider. They may be giving you resources that you use for your cloud solution, but they themselves are not providing you a cloud service. And so that understanding that doesn't therefore mean the service is bad. What it means, it gives us a sense of understanding of how to communicate and what to expect from a particular service provider. And of course, when things go wrong, if you're a cloud service provider, you have to make sure things are managed properly. If you are using infrastructure as a service resources, you have to put monitoring in place and have the appropriate telemetry to ensure that the services that you are delivering to your clients continue to be delivered. While I move on, I could kind of see the room by show of hands. Anybody in the middle of IaaS deployments or supporting IaaS solutions right now? I see one hand, two hands. It's pretty cool. Not the whole room. And we'll see later on. We're really open to dialogue. I'd like to hear, perhaps via Twitter or one of our other means of communication, how that's been going for you and some of the challenges you've been facing. I know, Andre and Stephen, I have half an hour and I feel like I want to do the world inside of it. Anyway, continuing with service models. So then, speaking to PaaS, what's that? So remember I mentioned in my first slide and my agenda slide that really you may be giving up some power when you decide to use platform as a service resources in your own solution. And that power relates to when the VM gets turned on, or where exactly in a data center particular assets are stored. But in giving up that power, sacrificing that power, you end up having a lot more flexibility and less worry in terms of delivering the core services needed for your solution. So the cloud provider, whomever you're using to deliver this PaaS, they would manage things like security and storage and compute, but you get to leave those headaches in their hand and focus on delivering the solution you want to deliver. Typically, this is used by developers and persons who are building solutions for others. So you have less responsibility for infrastructure. You may still want to be aware or not, but you still have to architect a solution as a developer. It's not the end. The end really is what your final clients are using the service for. So it may be that you're building a platform solution that you want others to use to deliver further solutions on. And I know that sounds fairly theoretical, but that's exactly what we do here at Teleos. When we deliver a platform as a service solution. It's called QuickWorks, and it enables a new kind of developer. Whereas the developers when I was in school, we focused only on writing code, and we described coding languages in terms of first, second, third, and fourth generation. This enables developers to not have to use any programming languages at all, yet build solutions to specific needs. So it allows us to understand what a particular challenge might be. Let's say it's in leave management in a company, and convert that understanding into a set of steps and a solution that can be deployed in a particular environment. We've done that here in Trinidad. We also not focus on things like logistics management and enabling analysts and people who understand a client's needs to build solutions without having to worry about infrastructure or worry about servers or about even programming languages. So it's a lot of fun for us. And remember I mentioned that noise. The noise we hear is us making that thing better and better. And of course, because you're using if you're using PaaS, which is platform as a service, you can rapidly build on top of existing deployments of infrastructure rather than having to worry about deploying infrastructure, then going after building solutions. So as mentioned, here at Teleos, we build something called QuickWorks. So I saw a couple hands in it when I asked about IaaS. Anybody actually building PaaS solutions? And if not building, do you have experience leveraging platform as a service solutions? And that means, for example, if you use Azure, you may have used Azure's app service. Or if you use Amazon, you may have used Amazon Simple Storage Service. And any takers on the PaaS side of things? Pretty interesting. Okay, good to know. So as we continue, let's spend a bit of time talking about what that means for architecture. So in terms of architecture, when I say this, there's one of the newer titles in our area in terms of information technology and information communication is the cloud architect, and that's the person responsible for defining how a solution should operate in a cloud, be private or public, starting really from where it's deployed and what service layers are available, what security boundaries exist, and so on and so forth. So cloud architecture is a big deal. It could be daunting for those of us, for the uninitiated, but the more time you spend experimenting and looking at the space and understanding, the more you see the pathway you need to take and journey towards effectively building solutions. We've been here at Teleos, we've been talking about the cloud journey for a while, our own journey, but also helping others understand what it means to start from perhaps on-prem and migrate resources and migrate service usage to the cloud. But also we've been talking to those who, never having deployed, now building a service, they may start directly in the cloud. So I want to talk to us about three things before we wrap up. Cloud patterns, being cloud enabled, and cloud native. So cloud is new and old in the sense that it's been out since just before 2010, but there have been patterns that describe how you should approach building for cloud. We have a very short presentation today, so I won't spend too much time identifying individual patterns, except just to say, when you're building a cloud solution, and if you're using cloud resources, and I need to be careful here, you can build a cloud solution, as in you want to offer a cloud service, be it a software as a service solution, a platform as a service, or you want to offer IaaS services, or you may be leveraging cloud services, and in which case, both concerns should start from a place of what are the appropriate patterns for deploying this particular solution. Here at Teleos, we believe in patterns so much, we took half a wall and used it to remind our engineers, these are the patterns you're working with, these are the patterns to look for, here is how to think about cloud, here's how to approach solutions that demand these kinds of resources. So that poster we downloaded from one of the architecture sites that Microsoft hosts. We use Azure a lot, but we're not averse to other cloud providers, of course, like Amazon and AWS. We're always looking at what's happening there. But we found that this pattern, this poster was really good in helping us understand. And remember, you don't have to memorize the patterns. We don't memorize patterns here. What we do is we ask ourselves for a particular solution or a particular demand. What are some of the best ways to think about this? And this poster we have helps us to remember that there are patterns for storage, patterns for processing, patterns for compute, for security, for managing high availability, for managing consistency and scalability. Excuse me. So patterns, 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 they're very important, and they allow us to have a more predictable way of understanding and interacting with the cloud. So from understanding patterns, you may have existing solutions that would have been built before the days of cloud or would have been rolled out before cloud came. And you would want, you're hearing all this fancy stuff about high uptime and being able to rapidly provision resources, and you want to use that for your existing solutions. And in which case, you may want to consider cloud enabling a solution. It may be that you simply provide a place for when things get really on demand. If you know someone or you're involved in things like salary processing that have a kind of cyclical nature, it's fairly low, and then at certain times of the month, it shoots up in terms of resource demand for processing data or communicating with clients or receiving input in other ways. Then you may want to think, let me add some resources via a particular cloud provider, either someone who's providing it in a private deployment model or inside of a public model. You may want to access VMs on demand or access more storage on demand in a way to augment your existing solution. It may be that your developers or your analysts are not able actually to change the entire system at once. And so there's an interesting software design pattern that's called the stranglehold pattern that really says, grab pieces of your solution and modify that and modernize that and make that better as you work with existing original components. So cloud enabling is a big deal, and it when you may hear hybrid in two contexts. There's a hybrid deployment model, and then there's hybrid solutions altogether, where you are leveraging different vendors and different providers to deliver an overall solution. A hybrid is a way to go if you want to move to the cloud in a more gentle, more predictable, stable manner rather than replacing all your assets. One of the problems with cloud enablement is that if you were to stop there, then you should be fairly aware you will not be getting by using the platforms in a redundancy-oriented way. And what that then means is you may have existing solutions that are not easily given to being redundant. It may be, we know of that at Teleos. You've written a Windows service or a shell service that runs only on a computer, and it talks to local machine resources. And so the idea of having another VM available to simply switch off is not easy. So moving that to the cloud might mean moving it to a single VM, and therefore not really able to capitalize on what cloud offers, which is if you can rapidly deploy and rapidly provision resources, then if a particular resource fails, such as a VM, you should be able to rapidly switch over to another VM. But guess what? If you have solutions that were built before the time of cloud, it may not be able to leverage that particular feature of cloud. And you can see here in the slide that some of the stuff I'm talking to. Some characteristics may need to even get changed before you move a solution to the cloud. You may have been using a local, as in an on-computer, on-host, on-VM solution, and you need to find a cloud version of that. It may be a database or a form of storage, maybe a file system storage or whatever. All those things need to be considered as you think, let me cloud enable this solution. Cloud enablement is great. It may be great for backup or recovery. You may be talking to a client who has a local Active Directory and they want to have some sort of recovery in the cloud. That's great, a good solution. It may be that there's a single data center that delivers all these solutions, and you want to have some disaster recovery enabled, so you utilize cloud resources for that. It may be that you have a database locally that tends to groan under the weight of particular kinds of transactions, and you want, when the database is under some pressure, you're able to uh, bleed workflows onto the cloud, and then when it's not, turn off that and work locally. As said though, doing that does not necessarily allow the full capitalization of cloud resources. And in this time, that's what you want. I was at a presentation just last week, and I'll come back to it, but cloud native is a big deal, and that's where you build a solution to work natively using best cloud patterns and the best cloud approaches. You go after things like multi-tenancy. If you're building a cloud service, you seek geo-resilience. So it's not that if there is an outage on one locality or one data center, the service goes down. But really, when you build for cloud native, you build with a sense of replication and redundancy built in. And of course, if you're going cloud native, then things like operations management and this term, this wonderful fancy new term, DevOps, sings to you, because that allows you to deliver your solutions faster and manage them more quickly, and then, of course, turn around and have more insights into how your solutions could grow as a result. So when we say cloud native, this will refer to, and if it's one of the things I would ask us to look into, it's how we could, for newer solutions and newer projects, enable them to be cloud native. It requires a kind of a discussion and a conversation with the entire team to really make this work. It's not just that developers decide they would go with all cloud, when you may have certain policies that say data must live on island, for example, or must live at a data center that we manage. Then perhaps you may use cloud for processing resources or receiving first inputs from users, but you store the data locally. All those things are possible in hybrid deployments. Once you build cloud native, though, it gives you the biggest access to, if you go back to these patterns, understanding how to build with these patterns in mind. Just before we wrap up, I wanted to speak to a note on security. I'm thankful that on the agenda there's someone who's going to speak some more into this, but every organization, every government, every institution has to understand the policies around their management of data and traffic and risk in general. There's a lot of FUD, fear, and uncertainty around public cloud or using cloud providers. It is worth the look in terms of your ability to deliver services, the speed at how you deliver them, and the guarantees you get by understanding what you can put in place to manage your own levels of security, whether you go with public or private. And so that's all I'll say on that. As just a bit of a reminder, you might start on-premise, but you may have existing solutions on-premise as well, and you decide you want to get them to the cloud. Your first step is not opening up a window and going to a portal and starting up cloud resources. It's understanding the patterns and the designs that you need to implement. From there, you determine what should be enabled, and once it's enabled appropriately, it allows you to then leverage cloud while having existing solutions locally. You may decide to build new solutions that are cloud first or cloud native. And as I was saying last week, I heard that the UK government has taken the position that they're going to be building their solutions in a cloud native, cloud oriented way, which is a big deal to hear government saying. It's something that the private sector has been advocating for a while now, and we in the Caribbean, there's no reason for us to not participate in that approach and that kind of movement. At Teleos, we enable these kinds of solutions as well. But of course, because of what cloud is, rapid provisioning, rapid deployment allows for really nice evolution. So it doesn't mean, if you stay in cloud doesn't necessarily have to mean all in at once. Cloud may simply be, let's start using this particular platform or even this particular software as a service solution and understand how it meets our needs and see how we need to change as a result. But for the moment, if this is an introduction to thinking about platform as a service, because I saw no hands go up before, then it's good to talk about it. And any questions, you can talk to us here at Teleos. In terms of next steps, we love to have an open dialogue about cloud technology in the Caribbean. We at Teleos, we're always open to the conversation, and I'm sure for those of you in the room, you probably want to have that conversation as well. I'm glad for CaribNog for having facilitated this approach, and I am looking forward to see how this grows. And that's about it for me. Any questions?
All right, well, before we jump into the questions, thank you. Thanks, Irwin.
Yes.
All right, so let's see if we can get Irwin back up here. All right, let me quickly introduce to you the person who's going to be moderating the rest of this session and the rest of the day. Claire Craig of the University of the West Indies. She's based in Trinidad. Again, long-time Caribnog and part of the core Caribnog team. So I'm going to just hand over to Claire here, and she'll deal with our questions and answers and take us through the rest of the day. So thanks very much, Claire. She was actually going to be here yesterday, but had to deal with some major upgrades at UE, which were successful.
Good to hear.
Any questions for Irwin? Let me just say, Irwin is also a long-time Caribnogger, and he actually presented at Caribnog in Barbados the last time Caribnog was here. So he's not new to Caribnog. So, was that Irwin?
That is true. I forgot that.
Ah.
That's true.
Yes. So, questions for Irwin? Okay, Steve is coming to ask his first question.
Testing. Everybody hear me? Yes. Yeah. Irwin, how difficult, and let's talk about natively building apps that are cloud aware or cloud centric as such. What's the effort, or I guess the paradigm shift that developers that are used to building application in a particular way have to put in place in order to shift to this more cloud-centric? Is it difficult? Is it a major mindset change in how people approach application development as such? What kind of effort would be required to do that?
Well, I'll answer from two perspectives in terms of difficulty. First, because of what the cloud market is right now, it is literally on fire with people wanting developers to write solutions. And so I mentioned Azure and Amazon as an example. They're just two. It's almost anyone who's interested in courting developers to build solutions for their cloud, from bots and virtual assistants to applications for social networks and just regular web apps. And what that means is if a developer wanted to build a cloud native solution right now, there's a lot of support for that developer to get involved. I mean, across languages and across frameworks. If you were writing Python, or you were writing .NET, or you're writing Java, there is a place for you. If you are a system integrator, you are someone who was on the scripting side of things, and you were managing VMs locally, the understanding and the tools that you would have learned continue to move and continue to scale and are available at the cloud. There's so many command line interfaces you can use to access and manage cloud solutions. That's one way. It is in one sense, it is easy to get to the cloud. But one of the things in terms of getting cloud, I think a very key understanding is that when you design and you think about cloud, you should design for failure. I don't necessarily mean design for outage, but design for understanding about a resource being unavailable or a resource having an issue. And when you design with that in mind, it causes you to be a bit more defensive as it relates to how you build your solution. The cloud provider will take care of some of the things like denial of service attacks and take care of some of the security concerns. But you still have to make sure you underpin your solution with a healthy sense of, how can I, if this particular resource goes down, what's the alternative? And thus, platform as a service is a big deal. Because, for example, you could roll your own server installation, or you could go ahead and utilize a database as a service solution. And in choosing database as a service, it minimizes your concern for having to build redundant database connections into your solution. So yes, it's easy for developers, But to get cloud, the understanding about resiliency and failure is a big deal, I think.
Right, thank you.
Irwin, before we move forward, can you just minimize your presentation or stop sharing it so that we could get you on full screen?
Sure thing.
Okay. Any other questions for Irwin? But while we wait for Richard to come, I have a question for you. So, Irwin, and I'd call it a myth. There seems to be a myth that when you go to cloud, sometimes your resources, you may require less resources because you now have this thing in the cloud so that you may not need as many people to do what you used to do because it's a service that you're paying for. Tell us, if you're moving to the cloud, what are some of the concerns you need to look at with resources? Because you spoke about the fact that there's a need for greater monitoring, there's a need for greater responsibility. Is it that the responsibilities of your staff would change, or how that you don't use less people, but maybe what they do would be different?
A really good question. I was at a presentation just last year on, it was a question of similar nature to that came up, but it was asked like this. What happens to my job in the world of cloud? Because many traditional IT support service providers, those in the support roles, would be hearing, well, the VMs are in the cloud now, or the database is using a database as a service solution, so we don't need a DBA to manage the database itself. But as it turns out, the way we think, the way we understand solutions is very, very important for cloud. You may have to sort of change where you focus, but you still need to have a focus. So when you move away from infrastructure responsibilities and perhaps move to platform management, then you still have to be monitoring what the platform is saying about your solution. It may be that instead of building VMs from scratch, you are reconfiguring or managing containers. There is some need for training and retraining, but it by no means will mean that IT resources, particularly people, become unnecessary. They just need to have a different focus. In terms of cost, the cost may change from physical machines, and it may go towards other things you can do. I understand that when we think about IT and think about supporting solutions, we think about the cost of support, and we don't think about the cost of operations. And as it turns out, what cloud does is enables a whole new way to think about operations and operation technologies. And therefore, the budget we would have spent on VMs and machines and servers and networks, we may spend on pursuing operation technologies to make us do our jobs even better.
Okay, thanks. And I think we're pretty close to the next presentation, so let me just get Richard to ask the last question.
Richard Wall, Caribnog. Irwin, slightly different question in terms of a business perspective for cloud. So as technologists, we generally have a comfort level in cloud, moving to the cloud, embracing cloud technologies, right. But can you offer any for business owners, organizations that generally might not be fully aware, might view things slightly different from how we might view cloud in terms of that movement or that step forward, particularly around the lines of, like you were mentioning, feeling insecure or not sure of what security is. Anything that you could offer from that standpoint?
I have to be careful. Thank you, Richard. I sometimes have an unfair response to organizations that sometimes say, I won't go to cloud because it's not secure. Because sometimes when they say that, they say it without really appreciating what their current context and current environment is. It may be that they're using a single VM or a single data center or a single deployment in one locality, and their disaster recovery is not up to par. Or they have a lot of issues managing. They have a small team and a lot of issues managing the IT resources available. I have met organizations that probably have one or two guys that manage AD, they manage database, they manage email. They essentially run IT on their own, and it causes a lot of stress. and it is not necessarily the most optimal installation or solution. I think cloud frees up resources, and it's not free up to eliminate, it's free up to focus on something else or focus on core concerns. So any business who is probably reticent about cloud, I'd say they probably need to look up and do a bit more reading about how cloud has transformed and enabled transformation. And it may be the case that while one business says, I won't bother because I'm afraid, or they may not say I'm afraid, they may say it doesn't seem to be something I need to do right now. Definitely their competitors are doing it. Those who wait and continue to posture against cloud do so to their own hurt, I would say. It is not anymore the thing thought cloud and the various service models and deployment models for cloud is irrelevant or too risky to use. Businesses are seeing it as a way to get an edge on their competitors. And so those who choose to ignore it, they won't benefit from what they need to benefit from in terms of cloud, and I don't think it'll have a good result for them.
Okay, thank you, Irwin. But before we go, any questions? We do have online participants. Any questions from the online participants? No, not yet? Okay, great. So thank you so much, Irwin. And this is just another example that although we love you to be here, it's good that we can have remote participants using the technology to the full extent. So Irwin, great presentation, and thanks again, and continue to be a Carib Nugger.
Thank you for having me, guys. Take care.